Hello, and welcome back to Overdetermined's Elden Ring lore through. This is episode 4. We just fought the Tree Sentinel and beat him on the very first try, which I thought was pretty impressive. It has been about... it's been a bit. It's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months since I last touched this character. It's been a while. I had a lot of stuff to do with work, but I'm happy to be back here in this Elden Ring lore through. We just got a lot of runes from the Tree Sentinel, and I think the best thing to do with these runes is to run over here to Kale. Thanks so much. And I see I've already forgotten even what we bought. We already have all that stuff we need from him, so that's great. Good job. Good job, us. Man, pretty good game. I did miss it. I'm going to sit down a bit and just have a little think about what I want to do next. Okay, so after having thought it through a little bit, I'm in sort of a tough spot because my the only weapon I can use really is this great knife, which is fine in almost all cases, but against a few enemies, in particular one right here, and another one, kind of one right here. The great knife in particular is not very good, and I want to do my best to actually, do all these starting areas without rushing to get endgame gear before like a quote-unquote regular player would have it by this point. So I think what I am going to do is make that a problem for future me and just do something normal. Just do something nice and cool and fun. This is an arcane build. Eventually I want to be able to wield this flail because it does strike damage, which you can see right underneath its name. And strike damage is what I want in order to be able to fight certain enemies around here. But for now, we've got a couple of things over here that I think we still need to talk about. So let's go do that. Okay, I am where I thought I was going to be. We are just south, question mark, kind of just south of this little encampment. Here is a site of grace for us, and is there a merchant right over here? No, there's not. I'm thinking of way over there. So I think at this point we can just use these runes to level up a bit, because we do want to get our dex up a little bit. Ooh, and it'd be nice to get our vigor up. So let's. So we can almost get to 18 though, which is so tempting. But no. Here, we'll compromise. We'll do at least 1 into vigor and put the rest into dex, with the idea that eventually we will be a vigor or a vigor build. Well, in many ways, yes, we will be a vigor build, but won't be a dex arcane build.
Oi! You there.
Me?
Could you help us out, Cully?
I'd love to. I wonder what a coolie is. It feels like a slur when it comes out of my mouth.
What'd you go and do that for?
Sorry.
Oh, yes. I remember. Some clod turned me into a tree. You were just breaking the spell, weren't you? Thank you. The name's Bok. I was pushed out of the cave. Told not to come back. Not ever. Then I ended up as a tree. Lucky you came along, really.
I'd really love to know sort of who turned Bok into a tree. He seems like a nice dude. But truly I don't even think we have a sense.
What a shame. When they threw me out of the cave, they took everything I owned. And so this is all I have to express my thanks. I hope you can forgive me.
Thank you.
Well, if you can afford to wait for a while, I could sneak back into the cave and bring back something of actual value. Then I'd be of some real use to you, I reckon. Right, but I'll need a moment. I'm frightened of them, so I have to gather myself. My knees start knocking, just thinking about that god-awful cave on the shore. Right,
So this man has a bright yellow exclamation point over his head and is sort of expressing where you can go to start a quest in this sort of strange FromSoft way. There's not really a ton to say about him, except it's really interesting that he is a demi-human who is like fully lucid, can speak. If you look closely, you can kind of tell that he just uses the model of the like enemy demi-human. Like that's just this model with a little cap. And what a lovely cap it is. He looks kind of concerning from that angle, so I'll stop. But this, in many ways, looks like the most traditional quest that FromSoft really has done in this game, I think. Like you see someone who needs help, you go over to them, and they say, "Oh, if only someone could help me," and then you go help them, and whatever. And in many ways, there's just not really a lot to say about poor old Bach here. But let's read that arteria leaf. Dark red leaves with thick, swollen veins. Material used for crafting items. Blah, blah, blah. A faint pulse can be felt in the veins, stirs the blood, providing an enlivening effect. I mean, as far as this is a game about plants and life in plants, this is about as on the nose as you can get, right? There's blood in these leaves. This plant provides an enlivening effect. In many ways, like the urgery is meant to, I think. But the other thing we found is a mushroom, which is a fungal growth that thrives in damp thickets and elsewhere. Its thick, spongy flesh makes it a key component in throwing pots. There's not really a lot to say here either. Once we finally get to the DLC, which will be, I don't know, years and years and years at this rate, I think there's some interesting things to talk about then. But otherwise, it's sort of just a mushroom. And it looks like we didn't read this. Grace that dwells within the inhabitants of the lands between, the lingering trace of gold. Runes are nourishment for the development of any tarnished, provided a finger maiden can be found. ... And maybe there was one other thing that we forgot to read. Oop. Couldn't be. So let's go over to that cave on the shore. A new player might wonder if it's over here. It's not. It's over here. It's a bigger shore. So that's how you know. Yeah, it's a pretty good. Ooh, look at that. Look at the view of Stormvale and the Chapel of Anticipation way over there. Unusually clear for this vantage point, and a little low poly, I fear. But it looks nice from this angle at least. So let's make our way down, if I can remember in which direction to go. Because I believe there's a scary guy around here somewhere. I thought. Ah, found him. And he's walking sort of aimlessly. Sort of sad. Sort of patrolling in that FromSoft type way, where you wonder like what is he patrolling, and why. I've never really looked that closely at them like this. They're in rough shape. Their skin almost appears inside out. But we will fight him. I wonder where he goes, actually. Do I have the patience? I do. Oh. Nowhere, it seems. Hello. Yeah, no. They can scare the guy. I'm glad FromSoft allowed us to lock onto their legs like that. Otherwise, this would be a sort of horrible fight. I bet I could have gone for his face right there. Yeah. But once you get the hang of them, they're really not that bad. They're pretty easy to dodge. Whoops. You have to be careful with that slam attack because that AoE is actually pretty decisive. Okie dokie, did not drop anything. God, it really is a gorgeous game, huh? Okay. So he came up from this way. Again, sort of patrolling. I wonder in these games why every enemy fights us. Like, or I should say, every enemy fights us, period, full stop. I wonder to what extent FromSoft like built that in to the world, right? Because you kind of have to do it because it's a game and the game needs enemies. Am I gonna go for this? I don't even remember what it is. Okay, so it stops right here, and it'll be back in just a second. What I mean to say is, I wonder how much we should read into the fact that enemies attack us. Like, is that just a relic of the fact that it's a game that needs enemies to fight, or is stamp sweep, or like did that dude have a reason for fighting us, but like any sort of motivation of its own? I wonder. Stamp sweep. It's pretty fun if you're going the strength route. But the description doesn't have a lot to say. A fun thing about this is that typically when you see a campfire like this, you are like, hello. You are like conditioned to go towards it. But FromSoft already like breaking that expectation here in the very like literally the first step of the game. Whoa! It would be nice if you dropped a weapon there, but... Okay, so we got some stuff to look at now. Strip of white flesh. Thin strips of flesh taken from a bloodless creature. The dried meat toughens the constitution, boosting resistance. It's known for its long-lasting effect. Sort of in stark contrast to the arteria leaf. Funny that the flowers have blood and the flesh doesn't in this like very particular case. I wonder what the bloodless creature is. The only thing that comes to mind is the land octopus, but we sort of see their flesh, I believe, and also we see them bleed. Found by hunting bloodless creatures. Oh, I guess that we can. I guess whatever drops this is just sort of bloodless. Smoldering butterfly we've read, and that's it. And there's nothing over here, unfortunately. Except a scenic view. If for some reason you're watching this before you play, a note that these cliffs drop off very fast. FromSoft, you can never really swim in their games, so if I fail right here, I would just flat out die. But this, yeah, bring out the donkeys. Hello. Ouch. Ouch. Maybe they are this. I don't see any blood coming out of the hits that I'm doing here. Yes, yes. It's funny how much of these aren't like Eldritch monstrosities, even though they really look like it, right? Like a brilliant design, I think. Just a horrifying design. Oh yeah, land octopus ovary. We'll go kill this guy, and then with our dogs, and then raid it, as well as another one. And of course, the trick to these guys is you can hit their arms, and they come right off like that. And if you hit the other one, that one comes off too. And of course they are weakest where their head is. There we go. Okay, let's learn about these land octopuses. Puffy, milky, white ovary of a land octopus. Land octopuses eat humans in order to bear young, and theirs is the blood that runs through these ovaries. Creepy, I don't like it. So yeah, this is a bloodless creature then, as the blood that makes the other land octopuses is of human origin. All right, let's get in this cave. Do I have a torch? Yes.
It hurts.
Sorry, Buck.
Oh. What are you doing here? You must leave this place at once. They'll rush in and beat you to a pulp. You'll end up just like me. Oh.
Has this model changed at all? I don't think so. Yeah, not really. Another differentiating fact between FromSoft is you just don't do what the characters tell you to do. They say, go away. And they trust you to have the common sense to, in fact, not run away. But I just noticed we have some Melina dialogue to listen to. So let's listen. While Bach moans in the background.
Me? I'm searching for my purpose, given to me by my mother inside the Erd Tree, long ago, for the reason that I yet live, burned and bodiless. There is something for which I must apologize. I've acted the Finger Maiden, yet can offer no guidance. I am no maiden. My purpose was long ago lost.
So some like lines of dialogue spawn entire theories and are the types of dialogue that people go back to all the time, and that's one of them. The reason that she yet lives burned and bodiless. There's not really a ton to say at this point besides her mom is inside the tree, and also that she seems to imply that the entire reason she is alive is to satisfy some purpose. Like her entire being is to satisfy some purpose. Which I think is also sort of true of us. And I think speaks to the world more than it speaks to Melina herself. Hello. Ooh, some string. But that is dialogue that we will definitely return to, I think. Hello. Ouch. After fighting those guys, I think I've decided I need a cool weapon. It's just not... This just isn't very showy. Not very flashy. And that's really all that matters. But I don't know where I would get one. Alright, well that's the cave. Pretty small, pretty easy. Another land octopus ovary that this dude had. What was he doing with it? The world may never know. I've decided I am going to summon all the NPCs this go around. Just because it feels more appropriate for a lore through. You get to look at their cool little outfits, etc. And I won't take the challenge of dealing with these bosses by myself. Alright, Istvan. Come on out. Hello, Istvan. Put my torch out. This is one of the very few boss rooms where you can actually go into it without the light triggering. And so can Istvan. And you're sort of meant to sneak through these bushes to sneak up on this guy. Typically when Istvan's here, I like to go ahead and take care of these guys for him while he deals with... Ooh, there's the other one. Deals with the other guys. He's fine, he's fine. So I'll deal with the ads here. Istvan's really holding his own. Like I said, the NPCs sort of trivialize a lot of the game when you can summon them. In certain situations. Not all of them. Do the demi-humans keep spawning? Signs point to no. Uh-oh, this one's down for the count. Maybe this was going to be trickier than I was sort of giving them credit for. Yep, I was right. Yeah, Bach, you were absolutely right. Those guys are tough in there. Come on, Istvan. But these guys can't follow you in, I think. But if we don't trigger the other boss, then that would be ideal for me. Oh, and Istvan's worried about the other guys out there. Istvan, they're not... Istvan, help! Istvan, now, please! Yeah, now that we just got the one of an aggro, this fight will be a lot easier. So I'll help us spawn with this guy while we just keep him staggered. Whoa! He's still aggroed on me? Yep. Got the bleed out. Now his spawn can help. Their like a wild fighting style is really pleasing to my eye. Are they just a normal demi-human scaled up? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, what is a chief after all? Alright, sir. I know you're here. Hello. The idea is to keep hitting him to keep so that his bleed counter doesn't go down. Like, you see how mine goes down continuously? His is doing the same thing. Or hers, I guess. Hello, Viscon. Nice for you to join us. Yes. This one is the enemy. Ooh, okay. And that's it. Got the tailoring tools. I got the sewing needle. Goodbye, Isfan. He's gone. Like he was never here. At the end of most caves, I would go back to the beginning. In this case, there's a way I can go this way. So I'll go up here, explore a little bit, bring back his stuff, and then finish the episode. I think. But this is a pretty uneventful cave. There's some pretty uneventful demi-humans. Oh, I can talk about string too, if there's anything interesting to say, I suppose. I don't know what I'm going to say about the demi-humans and the back half of this episode. The name itself, I think, is the starting place, and certainly is just sort of there, right? Like that's just sort of what it is. But I don't really know what else to say beyond that. Hopefully, I'll think of something, or maybe the video will just fade out after I go back and talk to Bach. But no, this is an interesting area for our Dragon Pilgrim because it is called the Church of Dragon Communion. And over here we see a dead dragon, just a fully dead dragon. Not a stone structure like these, but a dragon that was killed, with its scales turning to stone, kind of? Maybe. I mean, talk about a bloodless creature. Suppose the environmental story does sort of show that the church itself began to deteriorate before the dragon died, because it is resting on a part of the church that would not have been there, like when it was constructed. I don't know, just death and decay all around here. The altar itself is a little interesting, with the lion's head and who can tell what's underneath there. I'm sort of preconditioned to somehow interpret those as dragon heads, but I don't, or dragon-like tongues or something. Ooh, snakes maybe? Yeah, snakes. And what are snakes, if not a kind of dragon. But I think if I examine it, nothing happens. Nope, I can do the ritual of dragon communion. But I need a dragon heart in order to be able to do that. We'll look at this more in the future. Some more environmental storytelling here with the dragons' heads chopped clean off. It sort of looks like all the head and the hands are just like tossed unceremoniously here by whatever invading force or conquering force. Yeah, look at him. Kind of. So maybe we're meant to believe that there was a dragon here that died defending its church. This was the priest. This was the priest. It died. Its altars were desecrated. The church destroyed many years ago. And since then, entire trees have begun to grow up in the church. That also leads us to believe that dragon bodies don't decay, meaning that they aren't biological in the sense that you and I think. So, like I said, probably made out of stone of some kind. Can I do a little parkour? Oh, I can. Can I get up here? No. I will go explore the island a bit. I believe there's not really anything over here. Hello. I don't want to kill them. But I must for the lore. Drop something. Thank you. A flight pinion. I can't kill the squirrel. I simply can't. I thought there was a beetle over here somewhere. Hello. Oh, great. A somber smithing stone. A thematic find, I think, actually. But what a lovely view of the lanes between. You really get a sense of the architecture that once must have, like the aqueducts that once must have graced the land, and even the water pouring out that once must have flowed through those same aqueducts. Of course, I am not the first to say it, but it is incredible how every frame is a work of art, no matter where you look, no matter what angle you look at the view from. But the other thing to note about this area, because we are not as like south as we can get, but kind of close, is just a bunch of wrecked ships. Not close. I don't know if that's how like wrecked ships behave in the real world, but way out there, a result of either something natural or war or whatever else. It makes me wonder if these were people that were trying to get here and failed, or people who were trying to leave and failed. I guess those are the two options. Either way, two very different stories, two very compelling stories, I would say. And a beautiful sky. Jesus Christ. But that's it for us here at the Dragon Communion. I said at the Grace, so I can just go ahead and head on back to Bach. I guess I should read this before I give it to him. Nope. Nothing really to say about it. And I gotta remember to read these other things. Oh, actually, his prized sewing needle, curved like a fang. His prized possession.
Oh, wait. Is that what I think it is? You got it back for me. My sewing needle. What made you go into a thing like that? My mum was a seamstress, and that sewing kit was all I had to remember her by. I always wanted to be just like sweet old mum. Then I suppose I can't just curl up and die, can I? Thank you. You're very kind. I always wanted to be a seamster like my mum. Then I suppose I can't just curl up and die, can I? Thank you're very... I always...
Again, this mention of mothers already come up quite a bit, more than I sort of was anticipating. Mothers and motherhood and birthing. Well, good for him. I guess we'll see him later. Yep. Alright, well, let's finish off by looking at some of the stuff, seeing if there's anything interesting to talk about. This is a goodly length of string, boasting no special qualities. Yep. Flight feather of birds, nothing really. Ah, here we go. Shard of smithing stone, drained of color. Strengthens special armaments to +1. Special armaments with unique characteristics cannot be strengthened with colored smithing stones. Number of steps and amount strengthened differed from standard equipment. Okay, so I think less to talk about than I sort of was hoping. Interesting that it's drained of color, suggesting that the color itself comes from the weapon itself, of which I believe we don't actually have any. No, the golden halberd will. I think that'll be somber. Generally, you can tell. Is it thematic? Is it cool, or is it quote unquote normal or usual? That's this episode so far. I'm going to cut to future me, who hopefully figured out something interesting to say about the demi-human chiefs. First, a disclaimer. Elden Ring makes discussing demi-humans difficult without wielding the unpleasant language that real-world racists use to denigrate other real-world peoples. I've done my best to minimize such language for fear of having this turn into something much weightier than a fun little look at a video game enemy. That out of the way, here goes. I should start by saying that the prefix demi literally means half. It comes from the Latin demidius. For example, a demi-semiquaver, typically called a 32nd note, is half the value of a semiquaver, typically called a 16th note. A demi-tasse is a coffee cup that has half the size of a full coffee cup. A demigod is half a god, the result of a parent who was a human and a parent who was a god. So it's not a stretch to say that demi-humans are half human. But what does half human mean? Are they literally half human with exactly one human parent, or are they half human in the way that dominant and oppressive social groups tend to consider outcast groups as subhuman or less than human? Both answers to this question take us down very different rabbit holes. Of course, the thesis of this series is that Elden Ring is overdetermined, so my default answer to such a question is it's probably both. Let's go down each rabbit hole. First, let's consider that demi-human is a pejorative term in the style of misbegotten or omen, which are similar enemies, races, maybe too strong a word, in Elden Ring. It's not inconceivable that demi-human is a kind of slur. After all, if I called a person in the real world a demi-human, that would unmistakably be an insult. And if I and a group of others systematically called a collected group of other humans demi-humans, that would unmistakably be a slur. But, for sake of argument, let's consider that the term is accurate, however pejorative. After all, they don't look human. Depending on the specific demi-human, they look like a cross between a monkey and a bat, or maybe some kind of weird lemur. Unlike the beastmen of Furimazula, they have no markings of history or empire, and they are somewhat less humanoid than the beastmen. They do wield daggers and other weapons, setting them apart from mere beasts, but those weapons are crude. When I discussed the beastman, I noted that it attacks with weapons rather than attacks with its fangs, which marks how it has not fully descended into beasthood. Well, the demi-human chiefs certainly try to chomp on you, though they also wield what appear to be backhand blades and have a certain dexterous grace with them. The demi-humans are organized into societies with said chiefs, but their society seems less advanced, for lack of a better word, than the castles, religions, hierarchy, and craftsmanship of Elden Ring's human society. The demi-human chiefs tie horns to themselves, seemingly to brag of their domination of other chiefs, which only feels that vibe of a quote-unquote uncivilized society. So, considering only the aforementioned evidence, we can understand a demi-human as something intrinsically or even biologically incapable of behaving like a full-fledged human, and thus is only partially human. There is one huge flaw here. Bach. He can speak, he can feel complex emotions, he can sew, he wears a jaunty hat. The only thing sub or demi-human about him is his rather ugly appearance. FromSoft are no strangers to the "don't judge a book by its cover" playbook. See the Odin Chapel Dweller. Right from the start, Bach is a classic ugly duckling that is almost indistinguishable from a human. And again, he can talk. So, is Bach representative of the other demi-humans? It seems unlikely that Bach is the only talking demi-human. True, no other demi-humans talk, but then most humans in the lands between seem incapable of speech and attack mindlessly on sight. Instead, it seems that demi-humans have formed a kind of parallel society to humans, if somewhat less advanced. Is their society less advanced because they are fundamentally incapable of building an advanced and complex society themselves, or because humans treat them as outcasts and withhold the resources they would need to build that society? I genuinely don't know and don't feel equipped to give an answer. It could be some combination of both. So instead, let's consider what it means if demi-humans are literally half human. They are literally born of a human parent and a non-human parent, in the same way that a demigod is born of a human and a god. The best candidate for the non-human parent, I think, is the beastman that we've met already. Or, given that the cycle of birth and death seems broken in the lands between, it's possible that some babies born to human parents just kind of come out that way. Later events in the game will elevate this theory from outlandish to mildly plausible. We also see different types of demi-human. We have the one with bat ears and a monkey's face, as well as the lemur dude. The chiefs themselves also seem to be of a completely different species than the other demi-humans. Perhaps the chiefs are descended from demigods, while different types of demi-humans are descended from different combinations of human and something else. We can only speculate. So why did the demi-human chiefs steal Bach's tailoring tools? If they are in essence outcasts and bastards, perhaps this bullying is a way of expressing resentment? Suddenly, a cliché short story presents itself. The demi-human chiefs steal the tailoring tools and pick on Bach for the same reason that any bully picks on the weak, their insecurity. Perhaps they're jealous of Bach's hat. Perhaps Bach attracts unwanted attention in the same way that a nerdy little kid does, so they steal his things and turn him into a tree. But later, in the cave, a chief unwraps the tailoring tools when no one is looking, fiddling with the instruments while lacking the knowledge to use them as they are meant to be used. Maybe deep down inside, the demi-human chief is just a creature that wants to be able to tailor. But that's a different story for a different and, in my opinion, less interesting game. Maybe there was thought and reason behind the demi-human chief's actions when they mugged Bach. Maybe not. They attack us on sight, bloodthirsty and screaming, so I'm leaning toward not. Still, though, Bach's sentience at least implies that there is something resembling reason behind the actions of the demi-human chiefs. But even if the demi-humans are indeed half-human and possess all the capacity for invention that regular humans possess, or even half of it, when the events of the game roll around, they are disowned by their human parents and pushed to the fringes of society. They are being crushed under the Wheel of Fortune, or the Road to Fortunae. After all, as the game tells us, it is merely a cycle. Just past the demi-humans, we find a vestige of an entirely different and long-dead civilization that revered dragons. The Wheel of Fortune has not yet blessed the demi-humans. Will it ever? Or will they one day follow that dragon-worshipping civilization into oblivion? I will note that I still think that demi-humans are difficult to talk about without wading into much deeper waters. I think there is a world in which FromSoft designs the demi-humans just a little differently and uses just slightly different language to refer to them, and people get in all kinds of flame wars on Reddit about how we're supposed to interpret the demi-humans. After all, it's really easy to start to get a little race sciencey with it. In many ways, demi-humans, which seem to be biologically inferior to humans and have one of their number rise up to bow deference to the human main character, is a race scientist's wet dream. And obviously that's not an ideal situation. Maybe they're not biologically inferior to humans and instead possess some kind of hidden wisdom unknown to dismissive humans. But then we're veering straight into noble savage tropes, and that's not ideal either. FromSoft usually steers clear of these types of tropes, or at least reinvents them enough to be unnoticed to someone who isn't looking for them, and interesting to someone who is. I'm not arguing that they've failed in that regard, still, writing about the demi-humans becomes tough. Anyways, for now, I'll end there without a firm conclusion. As always, there are no answers here, only questions. Fortunately, there is yet time for answers. The game will continue to throw demi-human bosses at us, each providing a bit more insight than the last. For now, I'll be satisfied with the knowledge that I got Bach his sewing kit back.